You don't need a time machine to step into the past. Just visit a ghost town, where time has frozen in place. These abandoned settlements scattered across the planet have become time capsules that preserve the history, sadness, and beauty of the past. Nature is slowly reclaiming these places. Grass grows through cracked asphalt, trees twine around abandoned buildings, and wild animals roam the empty streets. While the most famous ghost town is in Ukraine, there are countless other creepy, mysterious, and atmospheric places around the world. Today we explore some of the most sinister and mysterious ghost towns on Earth. These include vast metropolises that never became home to anyone, a city whose fate mirrors the fate of Atlantis, a once thriving luxury resort that has been compared to Monaco, and a chilling city where the gates of hell have seemingly opened. The real-life inspiration for Silent Hill. Many ghost towns are the result of wars and conflicts, and unfortunately this happens all too often. One of the most famous examples is Varosha in Cyprus. Once a glamorous district of Famagusta, Varosha was a thriving tourist destination until 1974. It had luxury hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues that attracted international celebrities. The resort was even compared to Monaco and welcomed millions of visitors. However, everything changed after the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974. Greek Cypriot residents of Varosha fled in haste, leaving behind homes, memories, and belongings frozen in time. The area was cordoned off, and resettlement was strictly prohibited under a UN Security Council resolution. Over time, nature began to reclaim the area. Buildings collapsed, plants took over the streets, and abandoned cars remained frozen in time in car parks. In recent years, both Turkey and Cyprus have begun to allow limited access to the area, attracting curious tourists. However, much of Varosha remains a derelict and decaying reminder of its once glamorous past. Sometimes, a ghost town doesn't emerge due to war, but rather because of poor planning and overly ambitious investments. A prime example is Forest City, Malaysia, near Johor Bahru. This $100 billion project was envisioned as a cutting-edge eco-city built on 4 artificial islands. Developed by China's Country Garden, it was designed to accommodate 1 million affluent residents, offering luxury amenities such as golf courses, a water park, office spaces, bars, and restaurants. Despite extensive marketing efforts, the city failed to attract enough people. Today, only a few hundred residents occupy this vast development, leaving most of it eerily empty. Many commercial spaces remain shuttered, and at night, only a handful of towers have lights on. Experts suggest that the project was intended for the middle class, yet its high property prices made it unaffordable for most Malaysians. Instead of a bustling metropolis, Forest City has become a costly reminder of unrealistic ambitions. Another hauntingly abandoned place is Hashima Island in Japan. In the 19th century, the Mitsubishi Corporation purchased the island to develop its rich coal deposits, both on the island itself and beneath the ocean floor. To support mining operations, workers were brought in, and Mitsubishi began constructing a self-sufficient residential complex, complete with all necessary infrastructure. By the onset of World War II, Hashima had become one of Japan's key coal mining centers, with production and population steadily growing. The island featured schools, a hospital, temples, and everything needed for a self-contained existence, functioning almost like an independent microstate. However, by the 1960s, the energy industry shifted away from coal, as it was deemed inefficient and environmentally harmful. Japan's economy moved toward oil, leading to the closure of coal mines across the country. Hashima's fate was no different. Mitsubishi announced the mine's closure, and soon after, the last remaining residents departed. The once thriving island was left abandoned, turning into a ghostly relic of its industrial past, often referred to as the Ghost Ship Island. Centralia is a striking example of human negligence, famously serving as the inspiration for the eerie town in the Silent Hill film adaptation. Decades ago, Centralia was a thriving coal mining town. However, in May 1962, a seemingly routine task led to disaster. Local workers were instructed to burn trash at a landfill, as they had done many times before. Unfortunately, this time, the fire spread to an abandoned coal mine beneath the town. At first, authorities underestimated the severity of the situation, But as the fire spread through the underground tunnels, it became impossible to extinguish. For years, the smoldering fire was ignored, until toxic fumes began seeping through cracks in the ground, making the air hazardous. Massive fissures appeared on roads, spewing smoke and gas. The crisis peaked when a 12-year-old boy was nearly swallowed alive by a sinkhole that yawned open beneath him. This finally prompted the government to act, allocating over $42 million to relocate the town's residents. Over time, nearly all of Centralia's inhabitants moved to nearby towns, leaving the once bustling community abandoned. Today, the ghost town is a haunting sight. Crumbling roads, deserted buildings, and an eerie silence, disrupted only by the thick smoke that still rises from the ground. The underground fire continues to burn and is expected to smolder for another 250 years. Meanwhile, Centralia remains a magnet for urban explorers and lovers of ghost stories, its eerie atmosphere solidifying its place in legend. The eerie settlement of Kitsault, often referred to as the Propaganda Village, stands as a peculiar anomaly within the tightly controlled borders of North Korea. It is the only town visible from South Korea and was constructed in the 1950s with a singular purpose: to serve as a beacon of North Korean prosperity and entice defectors from the South. From a distance, Kitsault appears as a vibrant town, lined with brightly painted buildings. Yet, a closer look exposes an eerie truth. The structures are hollow, lacking any furnishings, renovations, or even basic utilities. The lights in the windows flicker on and off at set intervals, creating the illusion of activity. Occasionally, maintenance workers or soldiers can be spotted, reinforcing the image of a functioning town. Yet the truth is that Kitsault is a carefully orchestrated facade, a ghost town intentionally built for appearances rather than habitation. The California Gold Rush was another phenomenon responsible for creating numerous ghost towns across the United States. During the peak of gold mining, settlements sprang up near rich deposits, bustling with fortune seekers. However, once the gold ran out, these towns were quickly deserted, fading into history. One of the most famous and best-preserved ghost towns in the U.S. is Bodie, California. Once a symbol of the gold rush and a major mining hub in the western United States, Bodie stands out due to its untouched state. Unlike many ghost towns restored for tourism, Bodie stands untouched. A chilling time capsule where history whispers through its abandoned streets. At its peak, Bodie was home to over 10,000 residents and nearly 2,000 buildings, with more than 30 mines and several ore processing plants operating at full capacity. However, as gold reserves dwindled and economic factors shifted, the town began to decline. By the mid-20th century, Bodie was completely abandoned. Although no one lives there today, walking through Bodie's deserted streets feels as though the residents have merely stepped away for a moment and could return at any second. This eerie sense of a town frozen in time makes Bodie both a captivating and haunting place, a true open-air museum preserving the legacy of the gold rush. Italy is home to thousands of abandoned towns, but few are as hauntingly captivating as Craco. Teetering on the edge of a 400-meter cliff in Basilicata, Craco was once a flourishing medieval stronghold. However, its history is riddled with calamities. In the 15th century, a devastating plague wiped out a large portion of its population. Later, marauding bandits terrorized the town, and failed harvests led to widespread famine, forcing many residents to flee. The final blow came in the 20th century, when the town's unstable foundation led to a series of devastating landslides, peaking in the 1950s. An earthquake in the 1980s sealed Craco's fate, leaving the remaining inhabitants no choice but to abandon their homes. Today, the skeletal remains of its buildings, a once majestic monastery, and deserted streets stand as eerie remnants of its past. Now visited only by stray animals and the occasional tourist, Craco remains a frozen relic of history, untouched by time. One of Namibia's most intriguing tourist attractions is Kolmanskop, a once thriving diamond mining town swallowed by the desert. In the early 20th century, the discovery of diamonds transformed this barren stretch of land into a hub of wealth and extravagance. At its peak, Kolmanskop boasted a hospital, a dance hall, an electric power station, a theater, a school, and even the first X-ray station in southern Africa. the town's residents enjoyed luxuries unheard of in such an arid landscape, including a swimming pool, an ice factory, and a 4-lane bowling alley. Kolmanskop also housed the continent's first tram system. However, as with many boomtowns, prosperity was fleeting. Once the diamond deposits neared depletion, the town's decline was swift. By the mid-20th century, Kolmanskop was all but deserted, left to be consumed by the encroaching desert sands. Over time, the once opulent Victorian homes and public buildings have been filled with dunes, creating a surreal and hauntingly beautiful spectacle. In the 1980s, parts of Kolmanskop were restored as a museum, allowing visitors to step back in time and witness the rise and fall of a diamond-fueled dream, now frozen in the sands of history. A true green pearl among abandoned towns, Houtouwan sits on an island off the coast of China. Around 50 years ago, it was a thriving fishing village home to approximately 2,000 residents. The fishing industry was so prosperous that a dedicated port was built for fishing boats and cargo ships transporting fresh seafood to the mainland. However, overfishing led to a drastic decline in fish populations, making it increasingly difficult for locals to sustain their way of life. Gradually, residents left in search of better opportunities on the mainland, leaving the village nearly deserted. For some time, a single fisherman remained, living in complete isolation without electricity, only occasionally venturing into the village. Over the years, the settlement was slowly reclaimed by nature. By the early 2000s, lush greenery, ivy, and creeping plants had completely overtaken the once bustling town, transforming it into an almost surreal, forgotten paradise. Eventually, the village began attracting curious travelers and photographers, eager to witness its enchanting beauty. Today, Houtouwan is both mesmerizing and dangerous. While birds and other wildlife have returned, so have venomous snakes, making exploration risky. Many visitors opt for helicopter tours to admire the village from above, while others take advantage of the designated viewing platform, offering a breathtaking glimpse of this modern-day Atlantis. Often referred to as Argentina's lost city, Villa Epecuén was once a vibrant tourist destination, located south of Buenos Aires on the shores of a saltwater lake. Established in the early 20th century, the town had a population of over 5,000, with thousands of visitors arriving each year to enjoy its resorts, shops, and entertainment venues. However, this lively town met a devastating fate. In 1985, a massive dam protecting the city gave way, unleashing a torrent of salt water onto the streets. Within hours, the entire town was submerged. Residents climbed onto rooftops, hoping the waters would soon recede, but they never did. Over the course of 2 days, Villa Epecuén completely disappeared beneath the lake. For decades, the city remained underwater, a forgotten relic lost beneath the waves. But then, surprisingly, the water began to retreat. As the lake slowly withdrew, what emerged was an eerie post-apocalyptic landscape. The once thriving town had been reduced to skeletal ruins, crumbling buildings, rusted bed frames protruding from the earth, and corroded street signs standing as the last remnants of a place where life once flourished. Today, Villa Epecuén serves as a haunting yet fascinating time capsule, a ghostly reminder of nature's power and the fragility of human settlements. Not all ghost towns are eerie and gloomy. It's hard to imagine, but this is not a scene from a Disney movie. It's a real-life fairy tale ghost town. The place is called Burj Al Babas, located in western Turkey, about 250 kilometers from Istanbul. Construction began in 2014, but today, this abandoned cluster of over 700 castle-like houses attracts tourists eager to witness this surreal landscape firsthand. The project was initially designed for wealthy Arab investors from Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Developers aim to lure buyers with the town's unique concept, picturesque setting, and planned infrastructure, which was to include mosques, shopping centers, and Turkish baths. At first, investors poured money into the project, anticipating high future returns. However, Turkey's financial crisis heavily impacted the real estate market. The developer was forced to halt construction and declare bankruptcy. By then, more than 300 homes had been reserved by Arab clients, but due to prolonged delays, most of them withdrew their purchases. Economic factors weren't the only reason buyers backed out. Many visitors to this ghost town noted that the houses were built too close together. Some even called Burj Al Babas an architectural nightmare, criticizing its lack of aesthetic appeal and questioning how anyone could distinguish one castle from another. Deep in the northern part of British Columbia lies Kitsault, another ghost town. It was abandoned in 1983, yet remains almost perfectly preserved. Remarkably, the entire town still has functioning electricity. Kitsault was originally built to house workers for newly proposed mines in the area. A total of $50 million was invested to create a thriving community, complete with apartment buildings, houses, restaurants, banks, shopping centers, and even a movie theater. However, within just a few years, the project collapsed. Demand for the mineral they planned to extract plummeted. The market crashed, and families who had just settled into their new homes were forced to leave. For the next 2 decades, the company that owned Kitsault maintained the electricity while searching for a buyer. In 2004, medical supplies magnate Krishnan Suthanthiran purchased the town for $6 million. He renamed it Kitsault in honor of his late mother and immediately began efforts to restore it. He hired caretakers to maintain the town and explored various revitalization ideas. However, none of these plans materialized, and Kitsault remains a surreal time capsule of the early 1980s. One of the most well-known ghost towns is Plymouth, the former capital of Montserrat, a British overseas territory. The town was suddenly abandoned in 1995 when a long-dormant volcano erupted after 400 years of inactivity. A series of eruptions devastated the town and much of the island, making it uninhabitable. Plymouth, once a historic and thriving settlement, is now buried under volcanic ash. When residents fled, they believed they would return soon. They covered furniture with plastic, left clothes hanging in wardrobes, and even stocked their refrigerators. Today, expensive dresses still hang in abandoned boutiques, and food remains in the kitchen storage of once bustling cafes. Lahars, mud flows, swept through many buildings, and over time the hardened volcanic debris cemented objects inside the rooms. Plymouth is now within an exclusion zone due to ongoing volcanic activity. The unstable volcanic sand erodes easily, causing the town to slowly sink into the ground, making it one of the most haunting ghost towns in the world. Fordlandia, a ghost town in Brazil, was named after the automotive genius Henry Ford. Located on the banks of a river in the Brazilian Amazon, this town was founded with the intention of supplying rubber to Ford Motor Company for tire production. Ford planned to harvest rubber from the Hevea tree by creating a plantation there. Soon, an American-style town arose, complete with wooden houses, a hospital with state-of-the-art equipment, a school, a church, and even a golf course. Despite its remote location, only accessible by river, there was no shortage of workers, and the town slowly began to fill. However, Henry Ford set strict rules, aiming to create his own version of an American utopia. There were no bars, nightclubs, or other entertainment venues, and workers were prohibited from drinking and smoking. The town served only American food in its dining halls. These harsh restrictions led to a workers' revolt, which had to be suppressed by the Brazilian army. Near Fordlandia, a small settlement arose with bars and nightclubs, where workers from the plantation would secretly visit. Ford's rubber plantation project failed due to his lack of knowledge of basic agricultural principles, and no rubber was ever harvested. Despite investing nearly $20 million into the project, Ford abandoned it, and by 1934, the town was deserted. Over half a century later, a few hundred people from the local population settled there, but remnants of the town's original buildings, including administrative and industrial structures, a water tower, and a sawmill, still stand. The equipment inside remains in the same condition as when it was installed. Pripyat, Ukraine. The world's most infamous ghost town, frozen in the shadow of disaster. Once a thriving city filled with life and the hustle of daily concerns, it is now frozen in time, a silent witness to the greatest technological disaster in human history. The explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Pripyat was founded in the same year as Orbit, with the same purpose of housing Chernobyl plant workers and their families. The city was designed with optimism, featuring a spacious center, schools, parks, and entertainment venues. Modern hospitals, a hotel, sports complexes, and a Ferris wheel were also constructed, although it never functioned. Life thrived in the city until the catastrophic explosion at the fourth reactor of the Chernobyl plant, which changed the fate of Pripyat forever. Due to radioactive contamination, residents were evacuated, leaving everything behind. Today, Pripyat is a city where time has stopped. Books remain open on tables, and toys lie abandoned in kindergarten classrooms. Nature has slowly begun to reclaim the buildings. Vines and bushes now cover empty structures. Roads are hidden under blankets of grass and moss, and trees push through concrete slabs. Flora and fauna have returned to these areas. Pripyat has become a time capsule, preserving the communist era. Decades after the disaster, Pripyat stands as a symbol, a reminder of human negligence, the crimes of the Soviet government, and a testament to nature's immense power.